So thank you very much for the nice introduction. This paper is a joint work with Elisa. She works here. And the aim, the main idea behind this paper is to analyze what will happen in the very near future in which, to accommodate renewables, we will face a change in tariffs. So just going straight to the point, because 15 minutes is a really short time to present this paper, which is quite, I can say, rich in terms of analysis. What motivated our analysis was start thinking about the change that there will be in the electricity market, because we have, up to now, we had a very nice structure with generators producing electricity, retailers who are selling electricity to the consumer. So the consumer, like you all are consumers, I am a consumer, what we are used to is to just have a sort of fixed tariff that is kept fixed for maybe 12 months, 18 months. You have a contract with a supplier, and then you get the same price for many months, okay? Now the market will change. Why the market will change? Because renewables enter in the market, there is a lot of volatility, so probably we will move through a more volatile price, which is the spot price that reflects the hour of the days. So we won't have a fixed price in the very near future probably, but we as consumer will have a sort of price that will change a lot. So there will be more variability. So we were thinking with Elisa, we were like asking ourselves, okay, we will change the price and it makes sense to accommodate renewable. How the relation between consumers, retailers, and producers will change because of that? How the market structure will change because of that? So the aim of this work is to focus on two different markets, the forward market and the spot market. So in this sense, this work is sort of linked to the very nice presentation that Frank Volak given this morning, because we're interested in both markets, so the forward and the spot market. We investigated three different agents, the generators, the retailers, and the consumers. We developed a theoretical model, try to include this preference of consumers for, the consumer can choose, let's say, between two different types of tariff. We have a fixed tariff, which is the thing that we have at the moment. In most of the market is still like this. Or they can opt for the spot market tariff, so something that changes every 15 minutes. So let's say every hour, just to make an approximation. So the consumer have this sort of option. And then we use our theoretical model to investigate what happens also to the generators and to the retailers. Why we start thinking about this? Okay, you know that the European Union has has many targets, and also they are really promoting this sort of engagement of consumers. Even if they were not very successful, there were many trials. I did some study on the Irish case, but there are many studies on smart meter trials. So they were given to consumer very flexible rates, so not just a fixed rate, a flat rate the whole day, but the consumer were experiencing changing in tariff. And they were not observing many shifts in electricity. So during peak hours, people were still consuming electricity, even if it was very, very expensive to do so. And they were not really shifting a lot during the night hours, in which was much more cheaper to consume. However, European Union is just promoting a lot of engagement in consumer, and also in Spain, from 2014, the pricing for retailers, so for the consumer like us, small consumers, let's say, were linked to the spot price. In this graph, you can observe what happened before 2014. So we have three different prices. The spot, of course, is the gray line, very volatile. We have the green line, which is the auction price, and the red line, which is the future price. Okay, what was the auction price? Basically, for the consumer that didn't choose a provider, so consumer that, like us maybe, so small consumer that didn't choose a preferred provider, the state was providing electricity at a fixed price. So there was an auction every 3 months that was fixing the price for the next quarter. So let's say there was an auction in December 2012 to fix the price for January, February, and March 2013. Then every 3 months, this auction took place, and that was the price that the consumer were facing. In order to compare to see how this auction price was going, we also check the future price. So as we were talking this morning, okay, to see if the market was manipulated or not, we took as a measure the future market traded on the same delivery date. So let's say again, took the delivery date as January, February, March 2013. So we took all the forward that were made in the 6 months before the delivery date by the market. We took the average, and again, you can see that they were not so different from the auction price. So on average, we can say they were very close. Sometimes the auction price was a little bit higher, sometimes was lower. So there was not an evident manipulation from this graph of the market. There was something happening on the first quarter of 2014. What was happening was that the auction price was much higher than the future price. So the regulation and the Spanish government claimed that there was this market manipulation, that the auction price was too high, so the poor consumer were facing a price that was too high, and then they choose to, let's say, stop this auction mechanism and to give to the consumer directly the spot price, so very volatile price. So this thing that the consumer won't face a fixed tariff, but they will face the spot price is happening in Spain. So this is just to, another slide to say that the auction price on average between 2011 and 2014 was not so different from the future price, almost was the same level. Of course, the spot price was much lower, but the standard deviation of this price and the skewness was much higher. So we are changing the market, and we try to find a model to understand what will happen if consumer can opt for a spot tariff. So the relevant variable here are the spot price and the spot market, which is W, and the fixed market, the fixed price, that is R. So the consumer have these two options. They can choose a spot tariff, which is the very volatile one, or they can prefer, let's say, the fixed and flat tariff. We have two markets, which is the forward market and the spot market. We solve the model backward, so we start from the spot market, and we use the equilibrium to clear the forward market. How are the consumer? As I was telling you before, in our model, we try to understand what will happen if the consumer have a preference for the flexible and spot tariff, so which is PW, with respect to the fixed and constant auction price, that is PR. So the consumer have this lambda, which is a sort of risk aversion. If the consumer feel like they prefer the flat and fixed tariff, they will have a loss every time that the PW, which is the spot price, will be higher than their reference price, which is this auction price PR. If the consumer are risk neutral in our sense, let's say, they won't really care. So if this difference exists or not, for them will be the same. They won't have an extra cost, like here, because of the difference between the spot price and the reference fixed stable auction price. If there is something that is not clear, tell me now, because the model will just need this, that you understand the notation and this variable, otherwise we will be lost very soon. So the utility function of the consumer has this extra component, which is the extra cost. So people that are risk adverse in our, with this definition, they will have an extra cost if there is a positive difference between the spot price and the fixed flat tariff that they had before with the auction. I don't have the time now to tell you the equation for producer and retailers. Producer, for the moment in our work, has a quadratic cost function, which maybe is a problem because everything will be very linear. But at the moment, just to solve the model in a closed form solution, we made this assumption. Retailer, basically, in our model, just buy everything on the forward market. They have the expected value of the demand. And they just adjust their position in the spot market. So if their forecast of the demand is wrong, they just adjust their position in the spot market. The retailer will serve just the consumer that don't want to go spot. So the consumer that prefer to have a fixed price, they go to the retailer, they have the fixed price for 12 months and they're fine. But the consumer can also opt for the spot price. So this is the equilibrium, so the spot price are positively related with the quantity, the total quantity supply on the market, and inversely related to the number of producer, which is quite intuitive. Consumer, this C is the quantity that the consumer want to buy on the spot market. So not at the fixed price, but they want to face the volatility, which is of course inversely related to the price. And the retailers just satisfy the quantity that is the residual quantity from the total demand minus the quantity that the consumer buy directly on the spot price. We'll go to the forward market, so we solve this with backward induction. In the forward market, how we can get the price? The price is at the level that cleared the market. So the total quantity bought by the retailer, all the retailer, plus the quantity supplied by all the producer should be the same. So the price is the one that cleared the market. The important thing here, the calculation, I mean, I cannot go through those, but the important result here is that the forward price is a function of the expected spot price, but also a function of the skewness of the expected spot price. So the more the price in the spot market will be peaky, the higher will be the forward, because the hedge will be, will be more important to hedge in the forward market, and also a function of the variance. This is a sort of standard result. We refer a lot to a model made by Lemon and Basbinder in 2002. The new component we added with our model is this part that reflects lambda. Lambda, that is the sort of risk aversion of the consumer. So if the consumer prefers to go to the spot market, of course the forward market will be less valuable, less important. And this is reflected also in the quantity that the producer sell and that the retailer buy in the forward market. So again, the quantity the producer will produce is an inverse function of lambda, and the quantity the retailer want to buy in the forward market is proportional to lambda, because if the consumer are risk adverse, in our definition of risk aversion, they will prefer to go with this flat tariff, so they will go to the retailer, and the retailer have a function in the forward market, let's say. If the consumer just go to the spot market and buy everything in the spot market, so will be very flexible, the retailer will sell less quantity in the forward market, so the forward market will become less liquid. Then we do an exercise calibrating this model to Spain, because the Spanish market is experiencing this situation. So they went from a very liquid forward market with the auction and the fixed tariff, they move to the spot price for the consumer. So we use the Spanish data to calibrate our model and to see, let's say, to calibrate a value for lambda, to see if consumer in Spain have a risk aversion parameter that made any sense, let's say. So we consider the number of retailers here in Spain is very small. There are just 5 big retailers that supply the 80% of the market. I mean, they were supplying between 2011 and 2014. Now the situation has changed. And we consider the generation unit, so we include in this 1,500 all the gas, all the coal, all the nuclear plants, also wind. We didn't consider the small solar PV, because they're like at the household level, they're like sort of insignificant for in making the market. We use the real data, so for the skewness, for the standard deviation, which is the variance, and the mean of the spot price that we for Spain between 2011 and 2014. So solving our model for lambda, we found this value of lambda, 0.65, which is a sort of risk adverse, not perfect risk aversion will be 1, but is closer to risk aversion than risk neutrality. Then we use all these results to stress our model, let's say. We try to see what happens if we change the number of producers. So if we increase the number of producers, this is the relevant graph, the spot price, of course, will decrease in our model, because rising the number of producers reduce the spot price. Another result that will be interesting is that also the increasing the number of producers reduce the future price, because spot market become more attractive. If the number of producers increase, the spot price decrease, and then people will just move from the forward to the spot. So also the quantity traded on the forward market will be less. Second, we stress lambda, so our risk aversion parameter, and that's the nice result that we found that the more the risk aversion increase, the more the quantity traded in the future in the forward market increase, because people will just opt for this fixed tariff. People will just go to the retailer will just go in the forward market, and everything clears in that way. If people are risk lovers, so lambda will be close to 0, people just go in the spot. So consumers don't care about going to the retailer, and the retailer have less incentive to go to the forward market in order to buy the electricity to sell in the spot. So moving through the important thing, the key message, I think, of this work is that it's fine that we have a lot of renewables, we have to integrate them, so it's perfectly fine that we want to move to a more flexible tariff. So it makes sense that consumer will face the spot price or something close to the spot price. However, this has some consequences. So if the consumer will stop having this flat tariff that the retail can provide, there will be less incentive also for the retailer to go to the forward market. And this can have some implication for the competition, as we heard this morning. The important thing, the final remark I have to make is that, look at this number here, is not that the quantity in the future market will go to 0. We are talking about a residential consumer, so big industrial player, big consumer, they won't be included in this analysis. We are just talking about us as normal consumer. So of course the retailer will still have a good reason to go to the forward market, because they will probably sell electricity at a fixed price to the big industrial consumer. And at the same time, there is a hedging problem for producers. So it's not that the forward market will disappear. It's just that there is less incentive for the retailer to provide electricity and to buy electricity in the forward market if consumer will just face the spot. Because, I mean, they cannot sell this thing at the fixed price. So these are the main messages, I think, of the paper. If you have any comments or questions, you are more than welcome. And I will skip the last slide, so I save some minutes.
Okay, thanks, Valeria, for the presentation. I would take some questions now related to Valeria's talk. Don't be shy. Okay, I would have one. I mean, you are talking about risk aversion. And I wonder whether you have as well thought about loss aversion. Because, I mean, this type of flexible pricing, of course, I mean, is as well going to induce quite some, as you said, some new contracts, no, for consumers. And if they are loss averse, no, I mean, the question is whether they are willing to accept this type of contracts, no, which means that at some points you have higher prices compensated by lower prices in other hours. Have you thought about this, and could that be as well something to investigate?
Yeah, does it work? Yeah. Do you hear me? Yeah. Okay. So yeah, the problem is with this model is quite unmanageable, let's say. So we have already many players, so we are not really looking at this sort of shifting effect that of course will be there. So there will be like a preference, also an attitude in shifting maybe electricity from one hour to the other. In general, I have to say I'm not really optimistic about this behavior of consumer. I mean, in the trial we had in Ireland, but also in other trial I saw, the electrification of the system is not high enough to make the consumer really shifting appliances. I mean, maybe they can shift the washing machine, the dishwasher, but if they need the lights, if they need to cook something and the cooker is electric, the demand is still not really elastic. Probably in the future, this thing will change as well, with storage, with other facility. But in this model, not really. I don't think that we will be able to take all this nice effect into account. It's a very simplistic model still. But